all this, because this is him right here looking at it all. So there's towers and towers of these setups, which are basically the batteries that Morpheus is talking about. All of these people are plugged in to the matrix, and the juice in their life is being drawn to support and sustain the system that the machines had built. Just like the Negroes, all the Negroes, and they have a scene in there talking about fields and fields of Negro. You can't help but think about cotton fields and other things like that that were used to produce the energy to drive, this case, the machine system, but as in the mud seal doctrine, to drive the peculiar system of the South. All right, and so now, and on this one right here, let's go back. And this imagery here, that's when the machine came down, because Morpheus and his crew, they had cracked, they basically hacked the system. They had hacked the system, and they had located Neo's body in the matrix, in the machinery of the matrix, and they had had the machine to go and get him and unplug him from his little space in that system. So it grabbed him. So this is the machine grabbing him around the neck, and we used to be called the stiff-necked and rebellious. Easy to lead in the wrong direction, hard to lead in the right direction. So the stiff-necked and rebellious creature was snatched from where they were, and so now this is him being taken by Morpheus and the crew. The ship was Nebuchadnezzar, right? So right now he's like in this Christ-like situation, even that little red dot on his chest, right? So you already have the iconography, the iconography of Jesus Christ in that, because he's laid out. Because you have, when you have the in the basilica, you have this picture of Jesus laid out on Mary's lap. That's an iconic thing. But this very look right here is a Jesus look, right? And the Sacred Heart and all the rest of that. And he's being pulled up to the light here, and it just happens to be 3 lights. That's just a snapshot they got, but it's there. So this is the Nebuchadnezzar pulling him up into the ship after they had hacked the matrix to unplug him from the matrix. All right, well, that's what the Nation of Islam did with the Negro. That's what the Nation of Islam did with the Negro. And so the idea we pulled him up, like the Imam said, the Nation of Islam was Trinitarianism painted black. And so the kind of language, speak to them in the language that they had already been spoken to. You've already been given Jesus language, God the Father, God, and Mary the Mother, and Jesus the Son. You already been given that. Okay, let's give it to you again, but it's painted black. So let's mutate the mutation. Let's speak the language that you have been spoken, and then let's not try to reason you out of something that you weren't reasoned into. It's like, let's just get you and grab you with our mythology, with our fantasy imagery, that connects to the fantasy that you've been raised on, and let's raise you even further to your own in your journey back to your original self. That was what the Nation of Islam movement, in effect, was. Okay, and so then, of course, you get this image where Morpheus is now, they got him in the operating room and then hooked him up in all these different ways. One of the statements that Neo makes in that situation, in that condition, he says, "Why do my eyes hurt?" So your eyes hurt because you never used them before. You've never used them before. And so all of these were the various things that were done to us in the processing. And in fact, that's what that was our name. When we came into the Nation of Islam, I was George Processing. Everybody, before you got your X, you were somebody processing. Well, this is it right here. This is you processing. This is me processing. If you were a part of that, And let me cover this also. For Future and others who, I never went through the Nation of Islam. Does that mean that I didn't get disconnected? Does that mean I did not get unhooked. No, it doesn't. If you have embraced the ideas mashallah, Allahu alam, I would say, in the ideas with the tone, with the nuance, the subtlety, the twist that we're speaking, that is speaking from an independent mind, brother and sister. It's just there's just so much. I have a whole set of other knowledges that, let's say, and I mean, they're written out, but they're just unpublished. It's just circumstances just haven't presented themselves, or I just haven't published them now. Because some things, if I publish those things without the right setup, or right situation for me explaining the context for them, then it's, I don't know. I feel like it's wasted. But let's just put it like this: that again, you can be a Muslim, and you can be Muslim, Bilalian Muslim, etc., and really feel the freedom, really feel the joy, really feel the pleasure, really feel the elevation, really feel the illumination. And I've been using the particle the. Probably proper based on what I'm saying is that you can have a sense of and just replace all my does with a and because you can actually have climbed out of the Negro frame and actually become a Muslim by declaration. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. But there is a possibility. I'm not saying it's the case for every Muslim who is not associated with Imam W.D. Muhammad. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying the possibility exists, and very strongly so, that for a Negro that has not embraced, and if you haven't come to an independence of mind, independent thinking, then there's still that latency, if not overtly Negro sensibility that can be operating in you, even as you are a Muslim under what you would call an orthodox school of thought. It's like I don't know, whatever that is. It's that there's some situations that if you had the chicken pox, then this particular, you can still get a full-blown case of where is it? I know it's not Crohn's disease, it's something. I don't know. The point is that the virus that could become a disease later on, if you've had chicken pox, then you could probably get this disease. If anybody knows what that is, throw it in the chat. But the idea, that's the case. Even when you become Muslim, you become a Muslim, you haven't worked that Negro stuff out. So you can be a Muslim, but yeah, you're a Muslim, but then there's also those of other ethnic groups that can sense in you and exploit in you the Negro that you haven't set free yet. All you have to do is just go somewhere. Just go to a masjid, non-affiliated, and you're going to see at least one example of what I'm talking about. So, okay, so what does it say about those who haven't? Doesn't mean that everyone has it. So for example, okay, I'm a Muslim. I never lived in the time of Prophet Muhammad, right? But I don't feel any less connected to al-Islam as Allah revealed it to the Prophet, peace be upon him, then, right? Now, I embrace it also with the benefit of what I'm saying to you now. So now this thinking, just like you can embrace, one more example, 1776, right? The Declaration of Independence, the war of independence, etc. I'm benefiting today from the War of Independence. I'm benefiting today from the Civil War. I'm benefiting today from the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm getting the benefit of those things that others fought for that I myself did not actually have to fight for. And to the extent that I embrace the ideals that they stand for, even like the America that Trump, for example, is talking about, let's make America great again. I don't think he's talking about the America that is expressed in the ideals. We hold these truths to be self-evident: all men are created equal, blah, 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 right? I don't think he's thinking about that America, right? But that is an America. So when Imam tells and told us about New World Patriotism Day, he was not speaking about being patriotic to the world that the Mudsil people were talking about. He's talking about the world, the patriotic to the world of the ideal in the statements and the claims, the moral claims, the universality of humanity claims. That's the America you're talking about. And so those ideals, to hold on to those ideals, are still worth holding on, even though they're not fully expressed in the world that we live in called America today. But you don't get rid of the ideals. I got to give you a word, nihilism. The nihilism, you have to look it up. It basically is like, everything in the world is effed up, and so don't worry about anything. Nothing means anything, so forget everything. That's nihilism. So it's very, very destructive. And the nihilism comes from losing your sense of values, meaning nothing has any value. So therefore you're nihilistic, right? No. So don't let those values, don't let those values get away. We hold those values. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We buy into that because it is true under God. Now, whether it's lived out by the Supreme Court, the legislature, or the executive branch of the government, okay, those are people, right? And so much to be said about that. So let me draw it back just to understand. No, you didn't have to be a part of the Nation of Islam in order to get the benefit of being unplugged. What you have to do in order to get the benefit is embrace the values that have come out of that expression. Embrace the values that have come out of that expression. The best of what has come out of it, especially the independence of mind, especially the behaviors that the awareness that cues you into, oh, okay, wait a minute, that's Negro behavior right there. No, I'm not a Negro, so I'm not going to be that way. Whether the trigger for this Negro-ness is coming from an Arab or from a Pakistani or from Caucasian or whatever, it's like no, it's like I'm a free and independent thinking mind in Al-Islam, and my interest and my energy, right? The battery concept, right? Because you have those that want to use your battery. No disrespect, I just want to be clear. It's true. There's some things off world. I'll use that kind of fictional language. Off world, that outside of America, that everybody in the Muslim world wants you to bleed your heart, mind, spirit, money, energy for somewhere overseas. And our heart is there, our spirit is there. We're a universal consciousness. However, that reciprocity is not there. It ain't coming. It ain't there for us. And it's like, if we don't deal with our stuff, utilizing the battery power that we are and that we have to solve our stuff, because we're allowing somebody else other than the one who made us Negro to siphon off all of our good human energy, power, resources, sentiment, etc., because of what they need over there. And God bless them. God is quote unquote everywhere. They have more. God's power is sufficient everywhere. We have our hearts and our moral sense there, but at the same time, who's handling our stuff over here as it relates to us, even us with problems with us, as we heard this morning, right? Shoot, man, we got our hands full with us. I digress. So the point is that no, you don't have to have been a part of the Nation of Islam in order to get the benefit from the Nation of Islam. All you have to do is embrace the values that were the values that were the outcomes of the prescription? What did the prescription produce as values, as mindset, as perception, as thinking? Embrace those and apply those and modify and mitigate those, which is what the Imam did. The Imam said, this is good, but no, there's too much of that. That's good, but no, there's too much of that. Move it over here, now it's proper. So don't throw it all away. Turn around, get what you forgot, get what's beneficial, use that, and then go forward with that. But upon the base of yourself as an individual human being, connected with the will of God for all humanity. Now, when you're on that track, like Ray Charles said, you got the right one, baby. That's what it is. I hope that's clear. If that's not clear, do not get off of this program today, or this program today without asking a question for clarification if you need it. Okay. All right. So this is the case, right? So this is what the Nation of Islam actually did. Let's go back and make sure we're still in touch with it. So what it was, the Negroes was the mud seal using as battery power to keep this world, as it were, going. The Nation of Islam grabbed us around the neck, raised us up from the level that we were on, and brought us into a space where we could be further rehabilitated to gain the use of our natural capabilities that we had never used for ourselves. And we were learning how now to do for self, right? And so it was the myth and the religion that created the synthetic egos. And we've already said at the beginning, the production of these synthetic egos were necessary in order to get and to restore. So it's like there's a catalyst to get the real person started all over again, but we needed a boost. Those of you who are old enough, and I know most of y'all are old enough to remember those carburetors, you run out of gas. When you run out of gas, and then even if you take your gas can, walk down the road, get you some gas in, you put it in the gas tank, then you go try to start the car, you're going to have to put a little bit of gasoline in that carburetor in order for it to turn over and get that engine started. Well, that's what the Nation of Islam, Farad Muhammad, did for the Negroes that embraced it. It was just that little bit of fuel in order to get that original humanity to start working again. But it was synthetic. We looked like we had returned, been restored. We got it all back. No, that was just a very strong simulation. And then the very beginning, which is what we needed. And not only for us, we were also providing a theater for the people who were watching, both the whites and the blacks. The rest of the world, but this is a black and white performance. That's what it was. All right. So you have Farad, who brought the prescription, and you had the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who carried it out for 40 years, right? All right. So the Yaqub's myth and the black supremacy teaching, all that was the operation. All that was the operation, right? His aim was to create a language environment that would be a strong magnetism, just like that thing grabbed him, pulled him up. It was strong, had him in its grips, right? A strong magnetic force that we just couldn't resist if we were not happy as Americans. If you were dissatisfied, you heard Elijah Muhammad and you had some of them hot ministers, right? The fire breathers, right? Malcolm, Minister Farrakhan, my brother brother Harun Abdullah was one of those that really excited me when I first came. We would travel up and down California selling candy. And we wound up down there in Pasadena, and his name was Henry 10X at that time. Man, Henry 10X, man, it's like I had never heard anybody that fiery. Obviously, I was still a young fruit. I hadn't even fell off the truck yet, so I was still young fruit on the truck. But Henry today, he was lighting it up, and it's kind of like, yeah, that's what I want to do, right? May Allah grant him peace and paradise, inshallah. So, so if you were dissatisfied, it's like once you went when you got hit with that lecture, you got hit with that weekend. They weren't lectures, they weren't khutbahs, teachings. They just call it teaching, fiery teaching. Fires up. It's like, man, it's like, how can you see that? Who wants to stand up? It's like, well, that Negro never stood up so fast, mashallah. Y'all excuse me if I wax a little sentimental about this, because it's a powerful thing. Let's move on. So that we would want to be this new black that this language environment would give birth to. That's what's involved. That's what it is. Man. So let's see how much further we can get. All right, so here we go. They really want us to get the language piece. All right. So this is a very big deal. Language as a fundamental social construct that shapes thought. Sidebar, marginal note. All of our conversations in our Jum'ahs about learning how to read the Quran in its original language, that also is just a massive river of necessity for us and for everybody. But it's like there's so much power, so much leverage, so much release of energy and potential that comes from understanding the revelation in the original language. I mean, literally, you're talking about hearing God, right? So I mean, so how much confidence do you get from knowing that what you know, mashallah, we'll use that term, knowing that what you know is from the Creator and the Lord of the systems of knowledge? It's like, what else do you need to be confident? I mean, how is it possible that once you know that you wouldn't be confident? That would only be the case if you really didn't know it, because it is an automatic confidence producing effect. You know, it causes confidence, right? Let's move on. So language, right? Here's a quote from Rudolf Enheim. In Toward a Psychology of Art, a collective essays, it says, addressing the nature of human language, he states, by the same process whereby he spins language out of his own being, he ensnares himself in it, and each language draws a magic circle around the people to which it belongs, a circle from which there is no escape, except by stepping out of it into another. This is a part of, end of quote, this is a part of the invisible, I have to use the term, jail, prison, boundary, box that we're in. Everybody. There's nobody that's not in a box. There's nobody that's not in a prison. There's nobody that's not surrounded by a magic circle that is born of their language. If you have a language, then you are bound by the world of that language. And so you want to get out of that world, you got to learn a new language. That's it. Mexican once told me, when I greeted him with a little bit of Spanish, he said, oh, it's very good. Because when you learn two languages, you become two people, right? That was heavy for me when I first heard that from him. It's like, yeah, I get it. because you think in the terms of the new language. As the deeper you get into the language, you think in the terms of those language, and you can be in those other worlds. So if you want to get out of the world that you're in right now, you need to learn the language of the world that you want to get into. And when you learn the language of the world that you want to get into, then you leave that world and come into the new world with new language. It's very important. The trap of our youngsters, when we talk about rap, that's also another T, rap, trap, right? So the trap is the language, and they call it, there's other languages too for it, but they call it trap. Trap is a kind of rap. It's called trap, right? And I was told yesterday that there's what you call drill music, drill rap, right? And that drill rap, that's music that you play just when you're going to murder somebody. Drill. And the youngsters who, that's their world, that's their world, that's their world, that's their language, that's their behavior, right? It's monstrous. It's monstrous when it goes wrong, right? So, all right. Okay, so that's the concrete statement of fact. Everybody who uses the language, they are encircled by the language that they use. The only way they can get out of the circle that they're in is to get into another language. But either way, you're going to be in the circle of that new language. And again, you can live in more than one world. If you go, okay, I got this language, I got that language. So you can expand your boundaries of freedom. Of course, it depends on what the nature of the language is that you're choosing. But let's move on. So now let's restate this so that we can understand this process that has occurred. And so we're talking about rebirth, okay, from one language to the other. Now let's think about it in terms of master narrative. Master narrative is also language. As you can see, I only replaced master narrative with where there was language, right? So restate it again. It says, with the new term, by the same process whereby he spins a master narrative. That is, what's your story? What is your story? Who are you? Where did you come from? How did you get here? Where did you start from? By the same process whereby he spins a master narrative out of his own being, he ensnares himself in it. And each master narrative draws a magic circle around the people to which it belongs, a circle from which there is no escape except by stepping out of it into another. All right. So Yaqub's myth and the message to the black man and the ideology of the Nation of Islam provided for those who embraced it a new master narrative, a social myth, a noble lie. That's what it took to get freed from it. Let's go back here. That's what it took. This right here, he needed to be grabbed by a magnetic language, a powerful language that could take them out of that world where they were a battery for somebody else's system into a world of their own. That's what all of the Nation of Islam master narrative, we said, Yaqub's myth, deportation of the moon, all of that, mind blown, but it created the space for a new master narrative. You are the original man, the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, father of civilization, God of the universe. Now, come on now. That's a master narrative, right? So, and this is the fighting fire with fire. Oh, white folks. Oh, you think you're gonna how can you say, indirectly make yourself God by saying the Son of God is white. Okay, you go there. You stop too soon. We are the God. We are the God, and we made you, right? And now you want a returning God? Okay, we got this guy that's come back after 25,000 years, and he is the God, born of the last God, who was a triple black God, and his job now is to get rid of you, blow you off the planet, and take over again and restore ourselves to our original place as the original man. Come on now. You Spielberg, take a seat. It's like we got this right here. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. All right, so that's what happened. Yeah, so I think we're gonna kind of wind up. Let's see. Oh no, we got a couple steps to go. Okay, so Professor Farad worked to create a language environment which would be strong enough that would hold a group long enough to reverse the effects of the peculiar system of slavery, that experimental clinic, and that would act as a womb, as a womb. The Nation of Islam was a womb. Get that, because that's what's coming. It was a womb. It was a prison. It was a jig, just like that machine that was holding him and pulling him to a place where he can get rehabilitated, quote unquote, right? There was a womb, it was a prison, it was a jig. It provided food for our emaciated egos and emasculated self-image. The Asiatic black man, which we just expressed, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, father of civilization, God of the universe, the original man, right? Yakub's myth, all of that, it's magnetic language to hold us in a place long enough to birth in those individuals, or to birth an individual, that is both of those, to birth in the individual, but the biggest hope was to birth an individual with the new psychology, right? It's like you got a laboratory situation, and the object of your lab is to create one that is of this nature. It's like somebody, let's go with diamonds, right? You're trying to make the first synthetic diamond, right? And it's totally very difficult without very special equipment to be able to distinguish between original natural diamonds and these synthetic diamonds. And you in the lab, you're trying to make that happen. Okay, Farad is doing the same thing. He's truly trying to create an individual who is totally free, independent, void of the stuff from the experimental clinic. Now, just think about it. Imam Muhammad was the first from Elijah Poole and Clara Evans Poole that he was born in that dispensation, the pork free, the alcohol free Elijah Muhammad, right? In the Nation of Islam, and that's Imam W.D. Muhammad. And we talked about the Polgar sisters. We talked about Venus and Serena Williams, and we talked about how the aspiration of the parent can be imbued and embedded even in the DNA of the child born under those conditions. That's the case with Imam Muhammad. And then when you have an environment that was designed to reinforce that, so you can look up the Pygmalion effect, how people live up to or down to your expectations. There are many things that support, like Allah's will is over it all. But I'm saying just on the earthly plane, you say, yeah, you put somebody in that situation, you create those kind of conditions, you can reinforce and produce all what you want. But it's not all pure behavioralism for us, the nature nurture argument. Allah's will is over it all. That's what I'm saying. It's like Allah's will is in this whole thing. So when you can see the pattern and the law of nature, you find an analogy, which is coming next. When you find an analogy for what you're seeing, what you're saying, what you're claiming in the law of nature, the laws of nature are the will of God. So if there's an analogy for what's happening happened in the law of nature, then it is also a statement that, and it therefore was the will of God. Okay, that's what's happening. All right. So to birth individuals, or to birth an individual with the new psychology, that manifests that original human innocence. Even going back to Neo, right? There's a he's the one. He's got to be the one. Yeah. Neo didn't know he was one. Neo didn't believe he was the one, etc. But of course, you know, Neo is an anagram for one, N-E-O, just O-N-E. So Imam Muhammad, similarly, it's like people always say this, people were this way with me, people that, but you know, I hadn't, you know, quote unquote, bought into it in a formal way, but that's what the environment that was set up for me to be conditioned that way, right? And when some people tell you something long enough, then you'll come to believe it, despite or whether it is or is not the case. At some point in time, you're going to believe it. But in this case, or rather, Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, he was, by Allah's will, intended to go where he went. But the apparatus for it was also a catalyst and a facilitator of his arrival in that state of mind and being. So that manifests that manifests that original human innocence, freedom, and performance intended by Allah for all human beings. So now that's the goal. The goal, like I talked about the artificial diamond, it's like the original man. It's like we need an original man. So in so many ways, Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, he became that original man. That is, that was the state that we were to start from and begin from and move from, right? And that was the general hope of Farad Muhammad. And when Elijah Muhammad, Clara Muhammad, when they were played that audio from the Imam, they was those in the circle that were trying to indict him in a final kind of way. Elijah Muhammad declared, Clara, isn't this what we've been looking for? So that hope was fulfilled in Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah. All right, so here's an analogy that works. So this is the caterpillar, and yesterday, sidebar footnote, in Juma yesterday, I talked about, I just pointed to the idea. So just use zombie caterpillars, and you can see what I was talking about that. But it's not this, since I mentioned caterpillars and I wanted to mention that. So that's just a footnote for Friday. But here, this picture right here of this caterpillar to butterfly is an analogy, therefore a natural law, therefore an illustration of what has happened in this whole transition, this transformation. Our cocoon, okay, the Negro. So you start from, okay, we all past Africa, slavery, you know, transatlantic slave trade, Middle Passage, blah, blah. Okay, 400 years, XYZ, Negro, all right? Okay, so you start with the Negro, then you take that Negro, it says, our cocoon was our immersion into the life, the lessons, and the language of the Nation of Islam. So there was a cocoon that was generated, that all of the life, because ultimately the cocoon that was the Nation of Islam was made up of all of what had been consumed and what had been consuming the Negro for their freedom. Again, we talked about Noble Drew Ali, we talked about Father Divine, we talked about Booker T. Washington, we talked about Carter G. Woodson, we talked about the other freedom movement activities trying to restore the Negro to his original state and condition, or a higher condition than the one that slavery put him in. And so upon that information, Farad is the one consuming it, and therefore we were the ones also consuming it because that was what we were being taught. And then from what we were taught was created a cocoon called the Nation of Islam, and everything that was involved, and all of the ideology that was involved, and all of the practices that were involved, and all of the time that was involved, that held us captive, the language that was involved, the lessons that were involved, all of that, it put us into a place where we were transformed into something quite different than what went in, but it came out of ourself. It came out of ourself. So the cocoon was the synthetic ego, the new mind, the independent mind that we had, that again gave us the wings that we have. And our wings give us the independence, and we're no longer pulled down and held down by the gravity of the world's thinking. It doesn't matter whether it can be a Muslim mind that's against our quote unquote natural and free embrace of al-Islam and achievement of the destiny that Allah put in our nature, or whether it's white supremacy, of which there's no such thing, but that's language that's out there. Only Allah is supreme. We get that? That's where we are. So that's the first resurrection. The first resurrection gave us that independence, gave us that autonomy, gave us the foundation, gave us the base. And then from that base, now the Renaissance is beginning. I'm having a feeling that we may be able to, yes, go on. Yes. All right, great. So I'm not going to, what are we doing here? Let me see what time it is. No, got to go. So that's fine. That's fine. We can maybe pick it up there. Let me just cut over. The reason I'm doing this is because there's a 2 hour I have to do more editing on this piece to get it ready. We go beyond the 2 hours. Oh, but I did start the recording like maybe 10 minutes or so after. So we got about 5 minutes of what have you. Any questions, comments, concise, if you will, that you